بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So we're continuing with our works of Ramadan and having a second look at certain specific surahs to recite in Ramadan, obviously, and outside of Ramadan. We're particularly using this opportunity to remind ourselves of these surahs and to make a new connection with these surahs and a new habit, inshallah, of reciting these surahs. So first is the heart of the Qur'an. And Ma'qil ibn Yasar radiyallahu anhu anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam قال قلب القرآن ياسين لا يقرأها رجل يريد الله والدار الآخرة إلا غفر الله له اقرأوها على موتاكم رواه أحمد وأبو داود والنسائي. It says the heart of the Qur'an is Surah Yasin. No man ever reads it genuinely seeking Allah and the next life, save that Allah forgives him. Read it over your dead. Right? And so what does that mean, the heart of the Qur'an? We're going to see many hadiths speaking about the merits of different surahs of the Qur'an. One is a quarter of the Qur'an, one is a third of the Qur'an, one is the heart of the Qur'an, one is the summit of the Qur'an. What does that mean then? It means that the Qur'an has different angles, has different perfections, just like the body has different things. Without your feet, it'd be very difficult to walk around. Without your heart, it'd be very difficult. Without your brain, it'd be very difficult. Each limb of your body is very, very important. And so each part of the Qur'an is unique and special and has something that another verse does not have. And so the Yasin is a beautiful surah. It doesn't contain ahkam, not directly. It doesn't contain halal haram directly, which is in contradistinction, for example, to the likes of Baqarah and Al Imran or Nisa or Ma'idah, for example, and other surahs that contain ahkam. But it is this fundamental, fundamental imani concepts that it contains. It's very, very important. So it says recite it over your dead. So that's a proof for those who say that the dead benefit from those reciting for them. So it's a genuine debate among the ulama, among traditional ulama. Do the dead benefit from reciting over them? Some say yes, and some said no. And alhamdulillah, there's sa'a, there's breadth, and difference of agreement among the ulama. And that's fine, and we respect both opinions. And a hadith specifically about the merit of reciting Surah Yasin at night. عن جندب بن جنادة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من قرأ ياسين في ليلة ابتغاء وجه الله غفر له رواه مالك وابن سني وابن حبان في صحيحه. So it says, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever recites Surah Yasin at night solely seeking Allah's face will be forgiven. So what does it mean to seek Allah's face? It means to seek Allah. Allah's face means Allah. Right? This is narrated by Imam Malik and Ibn Sunni. So Ibn Sunni is one of the students of Imam Nasa'i, and so he narrates. He has his own work which he built on. That's called Amal al-Yawm al-Layla, the works of the day and night. That's built on Imam Nasa'i's work of the same title. And he adds other narrations as well. And regarding Surah al-Mulk, روي عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن سورة في القرآن 30 آية شفعت لرجل حتى غفر له وهي تبارك الذي بيده الملك. رواه أبو داود والترمذي وحسنه. He says, indeed, there is indeed a surah in the Qur'an whose verse is number 30 that will keep. So literally, it says that shafa'at past tense. But Allahu alam, it seems sometimes, often the past tense, it's not really the past in Arabic. It's not really called the, you don't really call it the past in Arabic. It's called the al-Madi, which means the complete or like cutting. A safe al-Madi, something that cuts through something. So the concept of being the perfect tense, i.e. done and dusted, finalized, as opposed to the imperfect tense, something that's still unfinalized. So yes, it does kind of indirectly include the past, but it's not always used for the past. So here I translate it as, and this is my opinion, that will keep interceding for a man until he is forgiven. So literally it says it interceded for a man until he was forgiven. And Allahu A'lam is speaking in the general sense, meaning that they will keep interceding for a man until he is forgiven. And what is that surah? Tabarak alladhi biyadihi al-Mulk, Surah al-Mulk. Now this hadith, there's a similar hadith in the Muwatta Imam Malik. I believe that's Mursal, Allahu A'lam, which mentions that the Mulk yujadilu an sahibiha, right? That will defend its companion. So this idea that we've seen in many surahs, many hadith about being the companion of a certain surah. This is your buddy. This is your thing. And we're going to see a hadith to that effect as well, about the importance of being a buddy of Surah Mulk. So it defends a person, or defends its sahib, the person who used to recite it frequently. So may Allah make us of those people. And also Surah Mulk, like Surah Yasin, has these deep, does it have ahkam? I don't think there's any halal haram in Surah Mulk, but it is a relatively short surah in respect to other surahs of the Qur'an, like 2.5 pages, 2.5 pages, 3 pages of the Qur'an, and it is, and again it deals with the fundamental concepts of Iman, right? Fundamental things, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is what's our purpose here on earth, etc. Much like Surah Yasin. وعن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وددت أنها في قلب كل مؤمن. And there's a hadith, a longer hadith, related to Ibn Abbas, where the Prophet ﷺ was speaking about Surah al-Mulk, and he said, I wish it was in the heart of every Muslim. Right? Meaning that that person memorized it, felt it, and recited it. It was part of their life. It was their bosom friend. And this is narrated by Al-Hakim, and he says something here that I was unable to understand. He says, قال هذا إسناده عند اليمانيين صحيح. اليمانيين means al-Yamaniyin. Al-Yamani means al-Yamani. Right? And so the chain is Yemeni, not all of it, but most of it is Yemeni. The chain goes through one of the scholars from Aden, and Allahu Alam, from what I can seem to understand from it, means that Hakim is saying that in the eyes of the scholars of Yemen, meaning those people who knew those narrators, they believed those narrators were good, and they would consider this hadith to be sahih. And this is an important thing. Not everybody has the same insight or the same exposure to certain hadith narrators. So you might find that somebody, a scholar from, when a scholar has a better ability to rate a hadith narrator from his own city and from his own place than somebody else, right? And so for which reason it's narrated from Abu Dawood and Nasa'i that they would quote hadiths in their sunan with narrators who were weak, on the proviso that not everybody from their own balad, from their own locality, agreed that they were weak. I.e., there was at least some people who knew them well that thought they were strong. Right? So Allahu Alam, it seems to be something like this. Anyway, Imam al-Dhahabi, in his he has his footnotes on the Hakim Mustadrak. He says that no, one of these Yemeni scholars is not just weak; he's really weak, right? And so Imam Dhahabi would disagree heavily, and it seems that to that effect even Hakim is saying that anyway. Hakim, in principle, when he mentions a hadith in the Mustadrak, it means that it's sahih. But here it seems to be saying, it's sahih in their eyes. I don't think it's sahih. And Imam Dhahabi says it's not just weak, it's actually very weak. Because, one of the narrators is actually very weak. And he's from Aden, so it seems to be that's what they're referring to. Allahu Alam. But anyway, regardless, we've said this many times, a weak hadith is still a hadith. Just because we don't know the Prophet said it, or just because there's a possibility for error, it doesn't make it, what kind of error let's imagine what kind of error could occur here. Imagine if these are the words of Ibn Abbas instead. Imagine if it was Ibn Abbas who said these words. Imagine if Ibn Abbas said, I wish it was in the heart of every Muslim. It's not the end of the world, right? Imagine if it said every Muslim, instead of saying every Muslim, it said every mu'min. Right? Or every mu'min, every Muslim. It's not the end of the world. Right? So a mistake, and so, when we come to halal and haram, it's a big issue. We're trying to find out, is this halal or haram, or we need to be very careful. But when we're talking about something like this, it's not the end of the world. So it doesn't mean that it's worthless if it's weak. Even if it's very weak, it doesn't make it worthless. It's still useful. And the protector, Hakim and others, Nasa'i and others, they narrate from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud that he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man qara'a tabaraka alladhi biyadihi al-mulk, kulla laylatin mana'ahu Allahu azza wa jal biha min a'adhab al-qabr." And so it says, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever recites tabaraka alladhi biyadihi al-mulk, every night Allah will protect him because of it from the punishment of the grave. Right? This is a tremendous, benefit. Right? As we know, the punishment of the grave is a serious, very serious thing, and we really need to be protected from that. And so, and Allahu A'lam, this protection could be on two levels. Number one, that one will sin and be punished in the grave and then be protected from the punishment because of the sins, or that from the barakah and the lessons learned from Surah Tabarak, Surah Mulk, that one does not sin, right? That one repents and changes. Allah knows best. And then Abdullah Mas'ud, he said, وكنا في عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نسميها المانعة وإنها في كتاب الله عز وجل سورة من قرأ بها في كل ليلة فقد أكثر وأطاب. And he says, during the lifetime of the Prophet Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we used to call it the protector, i.e. because it protects people from this punishment. Indeed, it is a surah in the book of Allah, of the Almighty Majestic, and whoever recites it every night has really done a lot and done well. So this is particularly benefit of reciting it every day and every night. Right? So if you imagine, personally, if I sit down and recite Qur'an aloud from a mushaf, it takes me about 5 minutes per page, approximately 5 minutes, 4 minutes per page. If you can imagine, if you get good, if you recite it quietly, maybe 3 minutes, right? If you imagine memorizing it, maybe you can do it in 2 minutes or a minute, right? So 2.5 pages, 3 pages, takes like 5 minutes, right? And so it's a beautiful thing to do and a good thing to learn to do in this month of Ramadan, getting used to. Again, if you can't memorize it, you sit down and read it, beginning of Juz Tabarak, Surah al-Mulk, every night. It takes 5 minutes, and it gets quicker, you can do it in 3 minutes maybe. A very good thing to do. And then the 3 quls, or the 2 quls. عن عقبة بن عامر رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ألم تر آيات أنزلت لليلة لم ير مثلهن قل أعوذ برب الفلق وقل أعوذ برب الناس رواه مسلم. So here this hadith, there's various different narrations of it. I just took the shortest narration of it, and some narrations mentioned they were traveling, different things, and the Prophet ﷺ said, did you not know that those verses that were revealed tonight, i.e. قل أعوذ برب الفلق and قل أعوذ برب الناس, they are like no others. And so this is what we mentioned at the beginning of this lesson, is the uniqueness of every single and the special nature of every single thing. It's like you have family members. Not all of your brothers are the same. Not all of your sisters are the same. Your mother is not like your father's not like your mother. They each have a unique thing, right? And so these quls, again, of the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is they're short, and many people recite them. But again, because we recite them so much, it means we really have to pay attention to their meanings. Know their meanings. Look about translation. What do they mean? What are they talking about? Feel it, right? And recite it properly. And so, because they are like no others, their protection is like no others. Right? There's many hadiths to do with this. And so, Hafid Mundhari, in reality, he has a whole another section on adhkar. We don't have time to go through that in this course, because we're talking about Ramadan and this month of Qur'an, so we're talking about these things specifically. But the three quls have a huge role in our life, right? They have a huge role in life, and if you notice, they begin with qul. Right? They begin with qul, say, and so that's very significant. It's almost like it's a kind of a double emphasis of how important these words are. Say these very words. This very message is very, very important. Say it. I use it as a dua on a regular basis. It's extremely important. And another hadith indicate the same thing. عن جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله عنهما قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اقرأ يا جابر فقلت وما أقرأ بأبي أنت وأمي قال قل أعوذ برب الفلق وقل أعوذ برب الناس فقرأتهما فقال اقرأ بها ولن تقرأ بمثلهما رواه النسائي وابن حبان في صحيحه. So he says, the Prophet ﷺ said, recite, O Jabir. And Jabir said, what shall I recite? May my father and mother be your ransom. And the Prophet ﷺ said, recite قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. So I recited them, and the Prophet ﷺ said, recite them, for you will never recite anything like them. They are extremely unique, extremely special. Right? And so again, we have to use this blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and connect with them and recite them with tadabbur, with reflection on their meanings. And part of the meaning is genuine sense of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends us difficulties and makes us need Him, so that we correct our relationship with Him. So one of the things we can use this for is for protection. So when we feel generally like scared of something, right? The ayat al-Kursi is one thing, but also the three quls. Right? قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. These are huge things. Right? These are huge protections. Right? And various hadiths indicate that. So it's a huge blessing. Okay, وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت وأستغفرك